Welcome to Journaling with Nature, the podcast for those who want to turn curiosity into wonder, a pencil sketch into a rabbit hole of discovery, a moment of stillness into a life full of joy. I'm your host, Bethan Burton. Let's open the pages of our nature journals and explore this world together. Hello, this is episode 88. Today's episode is a little special because it's the very first time that I've had one of my guests return to the podcast to share what they've been up to. I'm speaking again with Alex Boon, who I interviewed way back in episode 16 of the show. Alex has done a lot of nature journaling since then and started a new and ambitious project this year that he calls the Daily Nature Journal. As part of that, he started a YouTube channel and begun working in new ways with new handmade art materials. We talk all about this in our conversation today. Let's listen. Alex, thank you so much for joining me again on the podcast. It's been a while and I'm so excited to catch up with everything that you've been doing over this time.
Thank you. Yeah, I was really just starting out with sort of sharing my nature journaling back when we first did the podcast, and quite a lot's happened since then. So yeah, it's really exciting to be back.
I'd love for you to reset the scene for listeners about where you are in the world and what you see around you, what your patch is like.
Sure. So I'm in the UK. I'm down in Devon, which is in the southwest of the country, and I live right along the coast. So I'm in a town called Seaton, which is the sea town, Seaton, right by the coast. And it's a really wonderful place. It's like in a river valley. So we've got an estuary that's quite important for wading birds as well. So I see a lot of wading birds from home. And we've got the coast, we've got the hills, because we're in the valley, we've got the hills on either side. And then if you go north, we've got woodlands, areas of moorland, and then we've got great areas like Dorset and Dartmoor National Park as well, quite close by. So surrounded by lovely natural spots.
And tell me about your workspace. You have a little studio in the garden, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think actually, I don't think I had that the last time we talked. I think I used to work. I used to work on my bed, and I sort of remember these days now because I had these boards at the end of the bed that I'd kind of lay them all across the bed and then work there, which was really awkward and quite uncomfortable. But yeah, we've since built a studio in the back garden. I spend half my time, I'd say, working out there. The rest is either out in nature or I actually work now with 3 other artists in a studio in a little village north of me as well. So
nice.
I've got that going on now as well. So
yeah, so you go there and just collaborate or it's like a co-working space?
Yeah, it is. We meet there on a Tuesday morning, and we're all inspired by nature actually, but we all work in really different ways. And then we open it up as a little shop. We teach workshops from there, and yeah, it's a friendship that formed out of Instagram, and then it turned out that we all lived really, really close. So yeah,
that's amazing.
It's a strange thing to happen.
That is a beautiful story. And tell me about your garden. I heard you say that you sort of let it be a bit wild for encouraging wildlife.
Yeah, I do. I live in like a Victorian terraced house that's got a front garden and a back garden, and I tend to leave them both as wild as I can. The back garden at the moment, it's full of bluebells, so I've got a lawn. It's pretty much just dandelions and bluebells, so it's kind of yellow and blue everywhere. I tend to I mow it like twice a year with a strimmer as well, so I don't even go not even a proper mower. And there's so much life out there, it's lovely. There's a lot of butterflies, and I even get slow worms in the garden, which is one of my favorite things. So yeah, it's great.
Wow. Do you get funny looks from the neighbours or are they supportive?
um, well, in the front garden, I think a lot of people think it's a bit odd because they can see it. But then our terrace is kind of split down the middle, and um, the side to our right, they have like car parks in the front garden, so they don't have front gardens at all anymore. And then the other half is more like we've still got the original walls and the original front gardens. Mine's a little bit wilder than the other, but I think, I get quite a lot of smiles. There's like
Yeah.
roses growing over the wall. It's really like a country cottage, so it's quite nice.
Oh, I can imagine it and it just makes my heart feel good. So, wow. So, on your website, you describe yourself as a professional noticer of nature's details. And I think this is just such a beautiful description of what you do. And I wonder if you've always been a noticer, if your eyes and senses have always been open in this way.
I think so. I think they certainly were when I was younger. Um, like I used to go out on the horses, I used to go riding and explore the commons. I used to almost just try to imagine that I was in some previous time where you could just ride where you wanted and just keep going and be in nature. Um, and then I kind of lost my way for about 10 years and went to the city a lot. And
Mm.
it kind of, yeah, I kind of stopped noticing quite so much. But then the opportunity came to move out to Devon. And since then, it's like, yeah, rediscovering a lot of the things that I loved when I was younger.
Mm-mm.
I think that idea of being a professional observer is just, it's just like my dream. So a lot of people say that if you want something to happen, just pretend that it's already happened. So I like to describe myself as that.
Yeah, it becomes reality and it has because that's what you're doing. And this year you have taken on an incredible commitment and you've created a project called the Daily Nature Journal. And I'd love for you to describe this new, very ambitious project that you've taken on.
Yeah, it was quite funny that I decided to call it that. It was so ambitious at the start. I was like, right, I'm going to get on YouTube. I've never done YouTube before. I'm going to go on YouTube and I'm going to put a video up there every single day about all the nature journaling I'm doing. And I mean, it was fine because yeah, I do try at least to do some sort of nature journaling every day. But I thought, oh, that's what I'll do. I'll just film it and bung it on YouTube, and that's all you have to do. And I did not realize the amount of work that goes into editing videos, generating thumbnails, writing descriptions, and then promoting each video.
Yeah.
So it's not so much the daily nature journal anymore, but I am putting videos out about 2 or 3 times a week, as often
Mhm.
as is reasonable with everything else going on. And I think with the YouTube project, what I really wanted to do was share the way that I go about nature journaling. Because I'd started a Patreon and started to share it a little bit with sort of a few people, but then I thought that's not reaching a wide enough audience. And I felt it was important to me that I've developed this method over the years, and I really wanted to share that with people. And so that's what the YouTube project ended up being about.
Yeah. I'm so glad to hear that you don't do it every day. That sounds terrible, but I was like, "How is he even gonna do that? How is that humanly possible? What's gonna happen?"
It was a bit mad. I tried it for a week,
Yeah.
and I just noticed that the videos were not very good. They were only about like 3 minutes long, so that's all I had time to do. And it was like, no, this is not going to work long term. It's just not. Um,
But still, it's really ambitious what you're doing, and you're getting um, a lot of people sort of buzzing about it. And I love the project, and I love watching your videos. They're very calming, and I wonder if this is deliberate or if it's just your personality coming through. But I find them very relaxing. I can turn them on and just chill out and tune in. I don't know how to describe it, but they've got a lovely feel.
yeah, I don't think that was intentional. I think it's just I'm a bit quiet and laid back anyway, and I'm one of these people who actually physically can't shout. I find it almost impossible. If I attempt to shout, my voice breaks and I sound ridiculous, so I don't. So, yeah, it kind of naturally turned it out kind of sedate, and it's just like my personality just came out through it. Um,
Yeah,
and I think you've got to be natural with these things. I don't think it's possible for
absolutely.
fake something, to try and become a different person. So
Yes, absolutely. And it's very authentic. And I mean, that's why, because you're not trying to be someone else. It's just you and imparting what you're learning. And it's very beautiful. Congratulations on everything that you've done already this year. I'm really, really loving watching it.
oh, thank you. It's all a learning process, and I think this. I guess this first year on YouTube was always going to be just there's some bad videos on there as well as some good ones, but I'm learning which ones are good and which are bad, and what works and what doesn't. So
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you've been learning through this whole process. So I guess there's a whole lot, sort of really steep learning curve about the editing and the whole process of putting things in there. But I was wondering what other lessons you've come across.
um, well, yeah, there's quite a few. I mean, obviously the logistical stuff. I mean,
Mm.
picking up a video editing software for the very first time and having to learn how to do that, and yeah, work my way around that. And then all the stuff, thumbnails, writing descriptions, all of that side of things that I think when you watch YouTube videos, you don't realize, and like I
Yes.
certainly didn't, you don't realize just how much work it is. Um,
Yes.
but aside from that, on the nature journaling level, I took the opportunity to start with a completely new set of um, media, which I'd never used before. And so it was kind of not only a learning curve with the making YouTube videos, but also using botanical and natural materials, flower pressing, and learning how to make botanical inks at the same time as well. Um,
Yeah, this is amazing. But it's wonderful that you're learning along with the viewers. You're learning and teaching at the same time, which is really, really authentic. And yeah, this feels like a whole new direction in your nature journaling, in your style, more sort of art journaling and bringing in this botanical ink side of it. And I'd love for you to talk more about the botanical inks and also your collaboration with Louise from Bohemian Raspberry Art.
yes, so this was quite interesting because I bought some of her inks 2021, and I was sort of messing around and going, oh, I don't really know what to do with it. I don't quite know what I'm doing. Um, so I messaged her and said, I'd really like to learn more about this, and I'm starting a YouTube channel. And yeah, just our collaboration grew out of that. And she makes these. She's quite an expert. She's been doing this a long time. She forages. She makes all her own inks, and she sells them on her Etsy store. And I just wanted to learn what I wanted to get her knowledge. I wanted to learn all this amazing stuff that she's gathered over the years. And it turned out that she wanted to start a blog and start teaching, doing little things on social media as well. So we just decided to sort of tie this together. And the way we do it is she's our expert. She creates the recipes and writes them all out, and then I go and make my video as the beginner learning along. Um, and then we have on Instagram, we have the Botanical Ink Challenge where we post the recipes, and anyone can read them and join in and post their results as well. So it's spreading the idea of the I guess sustainable natural material. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this is becoming much more common. I'm seeing it around the place in other nature journals as well. I've been experimenting a little with it too. I've been collaborating with some internet friends in India who have taught me how to do it through a workshop. And it's amazing. It's a thrill. And someone described it as alchemy. And I think that word just captures it so beautifully. Would you feel the same way about that?
Yeah, I guess because I come from a science background, I see it, I guess, more like a great big science experiment.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I have in my kitchen. And my partner sometimes, has to put up with these interesting smells that are coming out of these pans, in all the windows and everything. But it's really interesting. It's art and it's science mixed together. And
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't work. I've burnt loads of inks and just made silly mistakes and had to start over. But you can, because you can test as you go along with little bits of paper. You've got a record of everything. All your mistakes and
Yeah.
you know. I've also got a little book where I record on one of my paper strips. I should probably show that somewhere. Um,
Yeah.
that documents that learning process and what went wrong and what went right as well. So yeah.
I was quite thrilled by the change in color that you can get by adding the pH modifiers. Um, if you put a little lemon juice, if you put a little bicarb, the color can completely transform. And one thing that I really noticed was that I was doing what you were doing. I was boiling some hibiscus ink and testing it on some scrap paper as I was boiling it. And it would go on very, very bright pink and then almost immediately change to black. And I was confused about this change. It was so dramatic. And then uh, the lady who taught me how to do it said, "Oh, you've probably got you don't have acid-free paper, so the acid in the paper is affecting the ink. So when I put it on some high-quality watercolor paper, it held its beautiful pink color. It's quite fascinating."
Yeah, I've been really struck recently by my nettle ink. The first batch, which grew in an iron-rich soil, came out this kind of blackish grey colour, and then the second batch came out in wonderful olive green.
Wow,
Exact same plant, exact same method, just different soil.
different growing conditions.
Yeah.
Wow, that's astonishing.
Yeah, I find it exciting because you just don't quite know what you're going to get. And then, you can suddenly have a color that you weren't expecting. And then, if you make enough of it, then you're just constantly increasing the color range that you have available.
Yes. And what about the techniques? Are they techniques? Are you borrowing from watercolor techniques? How are you learning to use the ink?
I think I'm borrowing from the inks that I'd used before. So I've
Hmm.
spent a lot of time working with Derwent ink tents, and I still work
Okay.
with that quite a lot. Um, and what works for that pretty well also works for the botanical inks. I think the main difference is the form that you get them in. If you've got a little bottle of ink with your botanical inks that you've made yourself, and you haven't got this sort of concentrated little pan or pencil. Um, so you're having to sort of work with a completely different. It's the same sort of medium, the same idea, but it's being delivered to you in a different way. I think the main thing that I've learned to do is to pour some of the ink out into a jam jar lid and let the water evaporate off. And then you've
Ah,
got a little portable palette, essentially. You can just add some water and liven it back up again. And then you've
interesting.
got, yeah, it works very well. I think it can be quite difficult to work with it straight out the bottle. You've got, even if you concentrated it down, it's still quite watery, and you've got, you'd have to layer quite a lot with it. But it's like with any medium, it's practice. You have to work out what your own way of working with it, and that's part of what I'm doing as I go along, really, on the YouTube channel. So yeah.
Yeah. Have you noticed the colors changing after several weeks or sometime on the page? Do the colors fade or change?
A little bit, some of them, but not too much. I mean, I think the nice thing that we've got as journalists working in a journal um, is that we're hiding the paper from the sunlight anyway. We're
Yes.
storing it in its perfect, the best way that you can store it. So I haven't really noticed much yet, but it's going to be interesting to see how it changes over the years.
Mm-mm.
And I think with this project, a lot of people ask me about this. They say, "Oh, aren't you worried it's going to fade? Your pressed flowers are going to fade and everything's going to die?" And so, well, so's everything. And I
Yeah.
sort of quite that transience of it, and the fact that
Yeah.
it's been captured more than anything. The project itself is the digital rendition of the creation of this book, not the book itself. It's not I'm
Mm-mm.
going to create this perfect item, and it's this item that's important. The item's not
Mm.
important. So that's how I answer that one usually.
Yeah, yeah, that's so interesting. And there is something quite, well, it's very natural and this acceptance, a gentle acceptance of the ephemeral nature of everything. And it sort of teaches you that lesson again and again, not to get attached to the perfect creation.
It's like a butterfly, really, isn't it? It's a
Yeah,
beautiful thing that's been created, but it's going to die, and you know,
yeah,
but it might sort of sow a seed in someone else who then goes and creates their own beautiful thing, and then that just spreads in that way. So
yeah,
it's kind of it's a sort of invitation to not get too attached to stuff again. Not, I
yeah.
want to create this one beautiful thing, and then I'm going to treasure this one thing forever. It's a more free and in the flow way of um, expressing yourself, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder about the pressed flowers and this new sort of art journaling technique that you're using as well. How did that come into your life?
Pressed flowers, yeah. I mean, I looked back in my 2018 nature journal and I found that I'd done some leaves, some pressed leaves, and they were autumn leaves that I think I put them in a book and then used glue to stick them down and put another layer of glue over the top. And 4 years later, they're still looking pretty good. And
Wow.
this method seems to work pretty well. So yeah, then I think it was in September I was on holiday and looking in some antique stores and I found a flower press and I thought, oh, this is nice. I had some nice woodpeckers on the front. It's a nice thing. I'm going to purchase this. And then when I opened it up, I found that there was loads of old flowers in there.
Oh,
So there was campion and heartsease and violets that they must have been in there decades. They
wow.
and I was just really instantly inspired by them. And I thought, well, I'm going to do this botanical inks thing next year. Why not incorporate pressed flowers as I go along? And so, yeah, I've just been doing that alongside the botanical inks. And I think the combination, the earthy tones of the botanical inks plus the pressed flowers, it's just something quite special, I think. So,
Yeah. Oh, what a story. That's such a romantic story about the flowers and like who put them in there, what was the situation. It's very, very like it sparks the imagination, doesn't it?
yeah, it does. And it's quite funny because it's kind of inspired some lots of new techniques as well, and I've got a bunch of new ideas that have actually come out of that. And I did a journal page that you will probably find on where you will find on the YouTube channel. Um, that where the flowers themselves they kind of broke up because they're so delicate. These are these old antique flowers. The petals were so delicate they all broke when I attempted to stick them down. Um, and I was, quite sad. I was thinking, oh, I just got to throw all of this away. But then I started painting them together, just sort of messing
Oh,
around with a bit of paper. And I thought, actually, they look beautiful. They look like fallen cherry blossoms. They just
mm.
accumulated. And so just put a few little bits on the page in each corner. And looking at that now inspired for a method going on in the journal to make some pages out of flower petals. So just paint with flower petals essentially. So
Wow.
mistakes like that can sometimes really inspire new directions.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. One thing that I'm really enjoying in your videos is how you sort of stain some pages with the natural ink and then do your journaling on top of the stained pages. That
Yeah.
is a really nice technique that I'd like to borrow.
It works, yeah, it does work really well. When I set up the journal, so one of the first videos on the channel is the journal setup. For about a month, I was in the studio with the other artists that I work with, and each morning, they were working, and I was sitting there staining pages in this journal. So this was December, just going through and testing all these inks out, Louise's inks from Bohemian Raspberry, and just creating backdrops for the rest of the year. And you get all of the advantages of working on tonal paper.
Yes.
You can push things back and bring things forward with white. So you get that, but then you also get the variety of working with the ink and the way that some of the colours swirl together. And yeah, just going through the book and every page being different. And then, you look through, I've allocated, say, 5 spreads for this month, and they're all these different colours. And then your
Yeah.
creative process is being triggered as to which pages you're going to use for which things.
Yeah. Do you jump around in your book, or do you go all the way through in sequence?
I jump around all over the place for that exact reason. See if it's going to work, against the backdrop. I'm
Yeah.
gonna use that backdrop that's going to look most aesthetically pleasing. I'm not interested in order. um, it's a bit like I've journaled in this way before, in sort of in my perpetual journal. Actually, I kind of just move things in as to where they look most visually pleasing, as opposed to trying to go from left to right through the years as such.
Yes.
So it's quite similar to that. Yeah, it allows you to be more creative, I think.
Yeah. My journal, I must say my journals are a little bit of a mess. I like the idea of people who, start a journal and then it's this document that shows the development over the year, but I just sort of grab a page and go. I'm not really fussy about. And then if I've missed half a page, then I'll go to that a year later. Yeah. It's a bit of a jumble.
I think I've tried it both ways. I mean, that very meticulous journal that I did was a very staunch from A to B through the seasons for a couple of years. And I think when that one finished, I was like, right, I'm going to have a bit more fun, and just, rather than slaving up with my coloured pencils doing lots and lots of detail, I'm going to do something different this time. So.
Yeah, I'm so interested to talk about that, because part of your very familiar Alex Boon style that we know when we see it is like blending images into beautiful compositions and taking time to capture these details in a very fine art style. And I wonder if you're doing a little bit of that still, or if you've completely moved away from that, and yeah, where you're at with that.
I'm still doing that. I'm not doing it so much in my nature journaling at the moment. I may come back to that in the future. I'm doing that more on my commercial side, in my art for sale, and what I'm putting into exhibitions and things. It's very much still doing that. So I've kind of split my Instagram offerings and my online offerings into two at the moment. On the Alex Boon Art Instagram page, you see a lot more of that fine art style, whereas on the Daily Nature Journal's Instagram page, you see more of my explorative work. And eventually, I will bring those back together. It's just this year it seemed to make a little more sense to to pull them apart a bit. But yeah, I'm still doing a lot of colour pencil. I put a piece into an exhibition recently that was my first go at doing a real kind of nature journal piece for sale. And it was a big tree that I was celebrating the life cycle of this tree. And it was a funny story, actually, because I started it in January and the exhibition was going to be in March, beginning of April. So I needed to get it done. So winter into spring was the idea. And I went for several visits to this tree and created a big A2 drawing with my usual signature of combining lots of images and blending them all into one great big bit of work. But this time it has labels hidden in there and maps and things as well. But what ended up happening was I was sort of really happy to see this tree. It's a beach, a really old beach on a boundary. And this field had been there for hundreds of years. And it's this wonderful tree. And I was, everything that was living around it was put into the picture as well. And then the day before the exhibition was due to open, the wind changed direction and the entire top of the tree was blown down.
No.
Yeah. it was very strange just having, you know, that would have stood there for quite some time. I mean, it
Yeah.
had already lost one part of the truck, so, you know, it must have been going through some stages. But yeah, the night before the exhibition, um, actually, it was the
Oh
morning
dear.
before. Yeah, a friend sent an email to me with, I think it was in the subject, "Your tree, I'm sorry to say." And yeah, I actually went, after the private show the next day, and went to see the tree, and yeah, it's just kind of strewn across the ground.
My goodness.
It's just remarkable that happened at that time.
At that time. And it's wonderful that you got to know the tree and you've been part of its changes. Is it still living?
I think so. It was very rotten on the inside, as
Mm.
old trees tend to lose their heartwood. So I don't think there was much of it to hold to buttress itself against the wind. There's one, well, there was when I was last there. There was one branch still coming up, but they had put a bunch of signs up saying tree removal. So I don't know how much
Okay.
of it they were going to leave, but I will go back and see.
This is one of those moments when you realize just how significant nature journaling can be for documenting the world around us and those very special individuals like this particular tree, that you have done this art piece and you have created a memory of it inside you, but also externally in this nature journal page. I think that's really important. You've captured it, even though its story, in its history, in its story, its life might be over.
Yeah, I felt very funny about it initially. I was like, "Oh God, I jinxed this tree. Spending too much time with it." But yeah, actually, I'm just really glad that I was the person to record it in those last few months of its existence in that form. And you know, they'll probably leave the stump, and it's going to be feeding fungi and interesting things for many years. So
Mm, mm.
its story isn't over by any means.
Yeah. I'm really interested to talk to you about your so you've been doing some nature journaling workshops for beginners, and I find that a huge part of my work as a nature journal teacher is helping people through, fears and wounds about art, and helping them understand that this doesn't have to be an art activity at all, that the process is important, not the outcome. Um, and I'm so interested to hear your thoughts on this because for you as an artist, you have very beautiful pages, and I wonder how you help guide beginners through this art fear and let them know that it's safe. You don't have to be a perfect artist, even though your pages are pretty much perfect.
I wouldn't say that. But yeah, um, I tend to, I have a lot of different journals that I think you don't see on Instagram, but you do see on the YouTube channel and you do see on the Patreon, especially. Um,
Mhm.
I have a journal that I take outside, and I only ever take a pencil and the journal, and I do quick sketches and a lot of writing. And I think that the most important thing for me when teaching is to not give people too much materials and too much overwhelm. So
Mm.
the way I suggest people start, and the way that I teach it myself in person and on the Patreon as well, um, is to really just go out with a blank book and a pencil. I provide those at my workshops as well, so they just show up with nothing. I don't bring anything along unless you're
Mm.
really set on what you want to do. I don't want to exclude anyone. Um, I just give them a small, a cartridge paper book and a pencil, and we just go out and notice. And I say you can draw, you can write, you can do. I don't like to dictate to people what they should do. I give them a few prompts, and then you can't really go too far with you just got a pencil and a page, and we're moving around quite a bit. You
Mhm.
don't have time to get too fussy and to they don't. I think some of the pencils have a rubber on the end, but I prefer the ones that don't. I prefer to give the ones that don't have a rubber, so they can't they can't rub it out either, and just to work quickly through the book. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I always, in my workshops, give people an ink pen to work with, and some people get a bit of a shock when they're asked to draw with ink pen instead of a pencil. But it's the same idea. Like you can't get fussy. You gotta just keep going.
Yeah, I think I would give them ink pens. I think the only reason I've started with pencils is because we had so many spare boxes of pencils at the studio. We had loads of pencils. I was like, right, this seems like a good idea. We'll start with pencils. But it would work just as well with a pen. Same idea.
Yeah, I like that. So, one thing that you're doing is keeping track of the weather each day and also your mood and seeing how these two things are correlated. And this is such an interesting idea. And in the past, you've mentioned to me that you were affected by seasonal affective disorder, which is where mood changes throughout the year because of not enough sunlight in winter months. So, I'm so interested to know your results and what you're seeing and how closely these two things are correlated.
Yeah, it's difficult to go into something because you're going to go in with an idea. You know, you're going to
Mm.
say, "Oh, I know that my mood is blah on these days." So it's really it's trying to remain objective with that
Mhm, mhm.
and be honest. Um, but there is pretty clear. I am really a solar powered person, and when the weather my mood bars. I'm using like the little blocks like a battery charger on a phone, and one block is very bad, and 5 blocks is very good. The high numbers of blocks on sunny days, and that's definitely absolutely no coincidence at all. So yeah, I think I have noticed that, but I haven't set the boundaries. I haven't set many rules about whether that's about whether I'm ill or whether I'm just in a bad
Mm,
mood about something else. It's just
mhm.
if I sit down to do my journal, what where am I on that scale right now? So I think thinking of it as a scientist, it's an absolutely rubbish test.
I love it though, and it's a really great example of how the nature journal, it's not just about writing down external things about the world outside of us. It's us as nature, us within nature, and this is a great example of that, I think.
Yes, I think especially in my little outdoor book, the one just a pencil, it really is. It's kind of spilling out my brain onto the page quite a lot as well. And my patrons on Patreon can read. I do put it all up there, and you can read all sorts of my nonsense in there. But I think not being shy about that is quite nice. It's showing people how you can use these. That there doesn't have to be a strong line between nature journaling and journaling. In general.
Yes, yes. I heard one educator in Canada, she was encouraging people to, kids to, at the beginning of the nature journal session, to draw at themselves as an emoji, like whatever feeling they had at that time, whether it was grumpy or happy or excited, as an emoji, because kids, that's natural language to them. And then you can draw another one at the end of the session and see how the session has maybe changed your feeling, or just as a way of like including yourself in the journal. I thought that was really cool.
I think that's a great idea. I wish I'd thought that. A lot more. It would tell you a lot more than my battery method, I think.
I'd love for you to speak about the Patreon. So the Patreon is like an extension of the YouTube channel in that you Patreon supporters get extra content. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. The Patreon. I mean, I don't think I'd even started a Patreon when we first talked. I think very new to it at all.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, at the moment, it's an extension of the YouTube channel. So if you like what's on the YouTube channel, the Patreon, there's the same videos, but I don't edit as much out. Just I think with YouTube, you're vying for people's attention span.
Mm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's a whole different way of making videos, but Patreon's for people who are already invested and interested, and they want to see more without me going, "Oh, YouTube won't like this. YouTube won't like that." I put a lot more in those videos for people to watch. Um, Also, I do paint along tutorials on there. At the moment, I'm doing one a month, and that's one of the pages from the YouTube where I actually talk through the entire process, and it's in real time from start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that I do to create a picture and tips, to have how you might like to create something like it. But I think with Patreon, it started out in one iteration that didn't work out so well. Now it's in this iteration, which is doing quite well. Well, now it's attached to YouTube. But I
Mm-hmm.
think next year it's going to go to a different iteration. So I'm just I'm playing around with it at the moment.
Yeah, it's important to be flexible and to see what people are enjoying, and to be able to pivot if you need to. And yeah, it's beautiful to watch what's coming out of your brain, your pen, your heart. It's really nice.
It's a very strange experience actually this year, filming everything that I'm doing essentially.
Yes.
It's it really does change things, you know. And it sometimes I do kind of think that next year I won't be filming everything next year. I'll be
Mm, mm.
creating content more in advance and a lot more how tos and things like this because it's very strange filming yourself working. And I think I'm still getting used to that, having to comment on what I'm doing and holding a pen certain way, camera. Yeah, it's very very unusual, but I quite like it. Really, I guess it's just a different way of doing things. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder, have your videos changed across these 4 or 5 months that you've been doing it? Have you changed your way of working or the things that you're developing, or did you find your stride right from the beginning?
I think the intentions remain the same. The type of videos that I'm producing, that's definitely stayed the same. But I think, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning, still had this idea in my head about getting loads of videos out, which was mad. The main thing I think is more about learning the platform rather than
Mm,
my style. So, I'm doing what I do, but I'm
yeah.
trying to make good videos that are engaging that people want to watch. And I think that is what's changing more than my journaling. Well, that's staying the same, but yeah, it's trying to make good videos is tough.
If you're having a low energy day, or you want to produce something, but you're just feeling like you want to keep it simple, is there a particular type or style that you will do on a day like that?
I tend to go outside on those days,
Mhm.
because just the act, I feel very excited about my local area and the places that I want to show people on the YouTube. So if I'm feeling a bit low and I don't fancy talking to the camera, I usually will chat away for a bit before starting real recording. And actually, my enthusiasm level by then has gone up. So
Yeah.
it's why we all do it in the first place, so we can get outside you know, and getting outside and sharing it with people who can't, for whatever reason, can't see this particular environment, either different part of the world or I've had people who have health issues who can't get to some of these
Mm.
places.
Mhm.
That's where my enthusiasm comes from for that, just to share. It's a bit like when if you have a film or a movie that you really really like, and then you watch it with someone who hasn't seen it. It's like watching it again. It's that initial
Yes.
enthusiasm comes back, and it's just like that.
Yeah, yeah. I think this idea, since the pandemic and everything is really shifting and changing, there's a whole lot of things now shifting to online. And I think that this idea that you can make things accessible uh, to people, say, who have a disability, or who can't, who have mobility issues or whatever it is, that you can make things more accessible to more people is such a wonderful outcome of that. And that really gives me heart. I really think that that's a wonderful outcome of all this shifting, even though we're giving too much of our attention to the online space. I feel this is one wonderful upside of that.
Yeah, I feel the same actually, especially since doing YouTube. I feel like I was spending a lot of time dealing with social media stuff and online stuff and being in front of a computer. So, next year I will have to address the balance a bit differently. That's fine. But I think for a lot of people who create content, being able to record things in advance and then have a stock of stuff that you've put out, that's the best way to do it in terms of, both your peace of mind, so you can not sit in front of a screen all the time.
Take a rest. Yeah.
And also just in general, you get time to produce better content. So I think that was my mistake this year, doing it very much as I go, and it's sort of quite mad and rush to get things done. And next year perhaps that balance will be a little bit better for me too.
Yeah. So you're really passionate about spreading the word about nature journaling and encouraging others to get involved. And I would love to hear in your own words about why do you think this is important to spread the word and encourage others to come to this practice?
Oh, it's a really tough one. I went to a climate cafe at the weekend, and getting more involved in various issues around environmentalism. And it feels to me that it's just a way in for people to start to notice things around them. And it might reach people who wouldn't otherwise do so. I think, we all have to play to our strengths as to what we can do and what our particular skill set can sort of push us towards in terms of getting people involved. And it seemed for me that doing the activism thing wasn't quite working, and I found it very hard and stressful. But teaching people about plants and identification and birds and drawing and whatever does make me feel like I'm making some sort of impact. And I think that's why. I think it's trying to use my skills to make a positive dent in this, terrible situation that we find ourselves in with climate change and biodiversity loss and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm 100% with you. I think that helping people fall in love with nature is vital, and this is a beautiful way to do that.
I love it. I love both in person and online when people are interested enough to ask me, "Oh, I like that plant. What is that?"
Yes.
Because by telling them what that is, then they've formed a relationship with it straight away.
Yes.
A lot of people, they tend to they like nature in general. They like walking in the woods, but they don't know what everything is. And so when someone says, "Oh, the ash trees are dying," they go, "What's an ash? Which one's the ash tree?" It's really important for people to have some idea of what's around them and connect with it, so that when these stories come out, about things that are being lost, there's more people who don't want to lose that thing and will fight for it and raise their voice up against what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now the seasons are changing, and I bet you're seeing a lot of spring things around you. I wonder about the seasons where you are now, and also about seasonal firsts, like the first time you see that bird arriving back, or that thing popping out of the ground. I wonder how that feels for you.
Honestly, it is the best time of year. I love spring so much. April and May are just my favourite months of the year.
Yeah.
And it's everything's here, everything's arriving. Although, where I am, we get a lot of winter migrant birds as well. So as well as things arriving, we've got a lot that's leaving.
Yeah.
Much fewer. We don't have curlews so much. The lapwing's gone. But we've got the swallows, we've got the chiff-chaffs come. And yeah, it's I don't know how to put it. It's, yeah, just watching things come and go, I guess, at this time. It's really special. And the plant world, of course, is springing to life. And I've got a part of on the YouTube, there's a series in the local ancient woodland that I go at the beginning of every month, and we check in to see what's changed. And I've got to do that for May because all the bluebells are out, so the woods are just a sea of colour at the moment, and the leaves are coming out on the trees, lovely spring green colour. It's the best time of year.
Oh, it makes me so happy to hear you talk about that. I wonder, so you talked about next year and how you'll be getting more of a balance, more of a rhythm. I wonder if there's anything you're excited about investigating or new techniques you want to experiment with in the future. What are you thinking about the future for your nature journal experiments?
I think that I want to go down the path of creating some sort of free course on YouTube. I think that's going to be something that's not so dependent on the season to get out. So I want to design something like that can be supported with extra content on Patreon, that's manageable to keep on putting videos out, and that can reach a wide audience. I think, I really love teaching nature journaling. I'm going to be doing more in person. I've got a lot coming up in the local area as well, sort of talks, workshops, taking part in various bits and bobs. So to continue doing that next year as well.
Yeah.
I think in my own work, I think I'll probably go back to coloured pencil for a little while next year, and try to bring everything back together under one umbrella, under my name probably, because it's quite hard to manage separate Instagrams and separate things for different things. Just try and navigate things a little bit better without sort of being still at it right at the end of the day before bed, just try and be a little bit better organised with it all.
Yeah. Oh, well, you're doing amazing things. I'm so inspired by everything that you're doing, and I really appreciate you joining me again on the podcast today. It's been so nice to chat with you.
Yeah, you too. I mean, it's I know that was a bit of a kind of run through a lot of the YouTube stuff, but I am on Instagram as well, and my website's about to have a massive overhaul and start looking really interesting.
Okay.
So there will be a newsletter finally, and lots of things will start happening there as well. So keep an eye out for that.
Wonderful. Thanks so much again, Alex.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this second conversation with Alex Boon. I'm so inspired by what Alex is creating with the Daily Nature Journal. His videos are very calming, and he shares all sorts of ideas and tips with his audience. I think this focus on sustainable art materials is a real growth area for nature journaling. Lots of folks are starting to make their own inks and even paints and pastels and brushes. I love that Alex and Louise from Bohemian Raspberry Art are collaborating on this ink making project and inviting other people to join in through the Botanical Ink Challenge. Whether you think of it as alchemy or a big science experiment, there's something very captivating about making your own inks from nature and using them in your nature journal. I recently made ink using turmeric and then used that yellow ink to paint a piece of turmeric root that I dug up from my garden. It felt really cool to paint something in nature using ink made from that same plant. If you'd like to experiment with making natural inks yourself, follow the link in the show notes for this episode to Alex's YouTube channel, where you'll find videos on exactly how to make and use natural inks. If you haven't already and you'd like to listen to my previous interview with Alex, you'll find that link in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for listening. See you next week.